Hello, this is Scott, and welcome to another episode of Winning Chess Strategy. In this episode, we take a look at a game from Nimzowitsch where he takes advantage of White's weak pawn and eventually uses that weak square to support a monster knight. Nimzowitsch is most known for his writings, such as his classic book, My System, also a chess praxis. He is also known to be the face of the hypermodern chess movement, and even has an opening or two named after him. Nimzowitsch in this game is playing black, and we will see the Nimzowitsch way of creating the weakness and exploiting the weakness. And here, as the opening is underway, we have a nimzo-Indian defense. And now, black doubles White's pawns, and White in return, though, has the bishop pair, and we'll see if he can put that to use or if black can attack these doubled pawns. Okay, and now here, black plays queen e7, and if white plays e4, black wants to answer e5, and now if white captures, black captures back. These are isolated doubled pawns. Chances are roughly even here, even with the isolated double pawns, because white has some influence on the center squares, but these pawns are still weak and subject to attack. White doesn't want that continuation. Instead, after queen e7, white plays bishop a3, and this is a clever little move that if white wants to play e5 now, white just captures, and now the bishop is pinning this pawn to the queen. Clever little move. Now, after bishop a3, black responded c5 instead, trying to fix this pawn here on c4, prevent it from moving forward. And now we see both players getting their bishop on the long diagonal and castling. And since both sides have castled, got their bishops out, Black's bishop is, however, a little better, since with the knight on f6 has a nice control over this e4 square. This e4 square, it can be pretty powerful. You get a knight there. This knight can maybe attack some pawns or sacrifice itself, and for the attack, who knows? It's just controlling central squares is such a key part of chess. Which is ironically, sort of against what the hypermodern system is. In a way, it's letting the other guy build up the center and then attacking it, but that's for another day. This is about this game. Okay, so we have castle, knight h4 to trade off the bishop here. After bishop takes g2. If king takes g2, and this is weird to me, since after bishop takes g2, if knight takes g2, this knight can come back into the game at f4, so e3, or maybe even e1 to d3. But instead, after king takes g2, this knight is stuck on the rim of the board, basically the whole game, and useless for white. Now we have queen b7 check, king g1, and again, white missed an opportunity after queen b7 for knight f3, bringing the knight back into the game. And the knight can maybe make use of this d2 square to defend this weak pawn. But that doesn't happen. White plays king g1, and now we have queen a6. And queen e6 attacking this pawn, and this is interesting. This is where the weak pawn aspect comes in. Now white only has one defender, that being the queen, for this weak pawn, and that wouldn't be an issue, but black can maneuver his knight to attack the pawn. So white essentially is going to have to trade queens eventually, or that pawn is going to be lost, because this pawn has advanced, and this pawn isn't here anymore. So the c4 pawn is weak. It cannot be protected by its own pawns. has to be babysat by pieces, which leaves those pieces in defensive mode, you know. Okay, queen b3, knight c6, like I said, it's coming here. Gonna attack. Rook fd1, knight a5. Now with 2 pieces bearing down on the c4 square. Like I said, we're looking for a queen trade here, or white is gonna sacrifice the pawn for some sort of attack. But I just don't see that happening. Queen b5. Now we have a queen trade. And now after the queen trade, the c4 square is, or not that square, c4 square becomes very, very nice outpost for this knight right here. And now after knight c4, just look at and appreciate the beautiful outpost here. Hits the bishop, and it's controlling all of these squares. It's just a monster knight, controlling a ton of squares, and has a ton of influence on the center, and it's such an active piece here. So this is exploiting the weak square, pushing the bishop back to c1, and it's actually, if I can go back there, it's actually kind of boxing out this bishop from doing anything constructive. And now, after a6, this forces the a file open, since if white doesn't take the pawn here, black's just going to capture and win a pawn. So after that, it looks like black is going to double and exert a lot of pressure on this pawn right here. So that's another weak pawn. We have d takes c5, and now, you know, which pawn should capture here? Should it be the b pawn or the d pawn? Well, what if d takes c5? You're actually giving white a little bit of counterplay in the form of an open file, and you got sort of a backward pawn here on b6. So actually, a little bit better move is b takes c5. And now knight to g2, trying to bring the knight back into the game, but it's way too late. This knight is just a non-factor. And now knight d5, and these two knights just control so many squares. And this pawn is under attack. So we have rook d3 to defend, rook fa8, putting pressure here. And after e4, attacking the knight, black can just give that knight up with knight e5, hitting the rook, and eventually going to be right on the bishop, and he's going to win material soon. And here, actually, white resigned, and it's actually interesting that white resigned, and I don't blame him. Black has a huge advantage, but why does black have a huge advantage? You know, let's evaluate this position. White resigned even though he isn't down on material, but black's positional advantage is so strong with his doubled rooks here and his centralized knights. And if you compare that to white's position, which has sort of 2 passive rooks, a bishop with no targets, and a passive knight, it's really no sweat for black to win this game. And let's just go back here and just quick summary. We have nimzo-Indian. We got doubled pawns. Black looks to exploit that. He brings down 2 pieces to bear on this pawn. Reduces the queen trade, and he gets this monster knight here. He's going to eventually bring the knight here and just have 2 monster knights. But that's using the weak square and attacking the doubled pawns. It's very, very instructive. And then he opens the file so he can double and eventually wins the game. That's all. Thanks for watching. I'll be making more videos soon, and good night.